Hey guys, you've heard of the Young Turks podcast because you're listening to it right now. But make sure that you subscribe and give it a 5-star rating if you like it. Thank you for listening.
Welcome to the Young Turks. I just stepped on your lines. You don't like it, do you?
Oh,
He didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in that kind of mood.
You're not gonna outmood me. That's not gonna happen, okay? Because I'm in a fun mood too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in the third hour of the show today, we have the Mooch. And Flame Monroe, Anthony Scaramucci and Flame Monroe. They're not on at the same time, although that would be fun, and we'll do that one day. Mm-hmm. But if you saw Tiffany Haddish's special, "They ready?" You saw Ida Rodriguez, who was awesome, and Flame Monroe was in that special, and we've got her on today. So now, speaking of things that are coming up in Houston, we're going to do a gathering, if you will, a meetup. So that's going to happen at 2 o'clock Central. It's going to happen at the Alessandro Hotel. And if you bring your swords, she will light them on fire. No, different Alessandro, sorry. Okay, don't bring any swords. So tyt.com/rally to get more information about that. That's next Thursday, isn't it? September 12th. Meanwhile, Anna's back in the studio covering debates for you guys. I'll be in the spin room. Mm-hmm. So Anna, John, Nando, and who's my fourth?
Emma's gonna be here.
And Emma Vigeland in studio. How you like them awesome. Apples? So if you're near the Houston area, go to tyt.com/rally, sign up, and come meet. It's not just me. Allison Hartson is also gonna be there, so that's gonna be fantastic. And obviously, everybody watch the debates right here. And then if you're in the New York area, and next Monday, that's coming up, September 9th at 5:30, show up at Bryant Park in New York, and you'll see a sign for the Young Turks. We're having a kind of a fun impromptu get together in the middle of New York City, see what kind of mess we can create, okay?
When is this?
That's next Monday at 5:30 Eastern.
So it's not impromptu, because it's your...
So she's in that mood.
I mean, come on.
So she's in that mood, okay. Flame Kasparian over here.
I don't know what's wrong with me. By the way, I'm a little under the weather and I feel a little kooky.
No, are you kidding me? We're having a ton of fun.
We are,
okay. Yeah. Impromptu isn't like we planned it, like the last second for us is like a week ahead of time, okay? Yeah. So we'll see you in New York, we'll see you in Houston, we'll see you right here. And I'm in a weird teasing mood. Apparently we're never gonna get to the show. Okay, tomorrow, in the third hour, normally we have the last half hour just for members, tyt.com/join. But tomorrow we'll do it live for everybody. So, and we're gonna take comments from only YouTube Super Chat. See how that turns out. So that's on youtube.com/tyt. All right, let's get started, Anna. What's that? What's first?
All right, well, earlier Donald Trump claimed that Hurricane Dorian was going to impact Alabama. He was fact-checked by both ABC and, more importantly, the National Weather Service, which indicated no, the hurricane will not impact Alabama at all. Trump lashed out at the fact-checkers, and then today he held a press conference in the Oval Office to give some updates on Hurricane Dorian. And I want you to pay close attention to the prop he uses in the middle of this press conference. Take a look.
We got lucky in Florida, very, very lucky indeed. We had actually, our original chart was that it was going to be hitting Florida directly. Maybe I could just see that, Kevin. It was going to be hitting directly, and that would have affected a lot of other states. But that was the original chart.
So he shows a map or a chart where the hurricane was initially going to hit, right? And if you pay close attention to that map, you'll see that there is like a black mark, Sharpie mark, that extends from Florida to Alabama. That was something that the Trump administration added themselves. The original map looks something like this, where you do not see the black Sharpie. So rather than admit that he was wrong and that the storm's path was not going to go through Alabama, he decided to hold this press conference and use a Sharpie to mark over Alabama to make it appear as though initially the Weather Service believed that the storm's path would hit Alabama.
So guys, I know it's funny and it's what a child would do, but it's also not funny because he's the president of the United States of America and commander-in-chief and has at his disposal the greatest military ever built by mankind and enough nuclear weapons to blow up the entire planet. And he's drawing in on National Weather Service maps with a Sharpie to prove himself right. And thinking that he won't get caught, every reporter instantly checked to see if there was any Weather Service map with that extra extended black area, and there are none. He drew it in or had someone draw it in. Like, I know we've gotten used to it, but we shouldn't. That is a degree of mental that would get you fired from almost any other job, and all those other jobs are far, far less important than being president.
Yep.
I mean, if
what he did breaks the law, by the way. It is against the law. Let's go to this tweet.
No, yeah. Hold on, before you get to the law. To finish the thought, like I'm thinking, I think it would even get you fired at Fox News. But if someone here manipulated a story for their own ego and showed you guys something that was wrong on purpose,
right?
Of course, I'd consider firing them, and I'd pull them into my office and I'd go, "What is wrong with you? Do you need? I mean, you need a therapist, right? Why would you lie to our audience and say?" And this is a really important, dangerous thing. Which way a storm is going? It already killed many people in the Bahamas. It could kill more people, and people are relying on you. They believe you over the news, right? I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, if it happened in a relatively small show like ours, there would be significant consequences. I think there would even be consequences at Fox News. I use them as the extreme example of like, who cares what we say, right? I mean, they even pulled Jeanine Pirro off the air for a little while for saying something outrageous. This is insanity. I mean, a child wouldn't do this. Maybe, it depends on how old they are, 6 years old, 7 years old. 25th Amendment, your guys aren't getting it. The emperor has no clothes. And so we're all used to it, we shouldn't be used to it. Now let's talk about how illegal it is, which is also another thing we're used to.
So a meteorologist and weather reporter shared this on Twitter, and I think it's important to know that it is a violation of federal law to falsify a National Weather Service forecast and pass it off as official, as President Trump did here. And then he notes the exact law, which is 18 US Code 2074. Okay, so what Trump, but here's the frustrating part about all of this. Trump has broken many laws. The hush money payments, the fraudulent Trump University, using his charitable foundation to enrich himself, obstructing justice. He has broken all these laws, possibly, inflating his assets to obtain illegal loans, deflating his assets to do tax fraud. The list goes on and on and on. And no one holds him accountable, so of course he's gonna keep breaking the law. Everyone treats him as if he's above the law, including Nancy Pelosi, right? So every time these stories pop up, yes, there's the comical component to it, and you feel tempted to laugh, and I gotta be honest, I did laugh. But at the same time, when you take a step back and think about it critically the way you mentioned, it's infuriating because no one is holding him accountable, and he has a bunch of spineless goons working for him in that administration who don't ever, try to keep him under control. They allow him to break the law and then they cover for him.
So look, I know that there's almost nothing that the president could do where his own cabinet will use the 25th Amendment, but is there anything that he could do where Nancy Pelosi would hold him accountable?
No.
And so what if he had, instead of using a Sharpie, had used a crayon and then colored it in, but like went outside the lines?
She would send him a strongly worded letter.
No, because the president has lost his mind, and is there any limit? Using a Sharpie to extend a National Weather Service map to prove yourself right when you're wrong. Like any other president, if Obama had done that, oh my God, if Hillary Clinton had done that, the national conversation would be vastly different. Why? Because Republicans hold the other party accountable, actually over accountable, like they would make mountains out of molehills. The Democrats make molehills out of mountains. We have Mount Everest in insanity here, and Nancy Pelosi's like, what Mount Everest? I don't see it. I don't see the insanity. So I want to give an alternate reality here for a second. Imagine if you had a strong Democratic Party and they had already started impeachment proceedings, and we're having conversations about the laws that he broke in campaign finance violations, his co-conspirator every day. Imagine every day if the Democrats in those hearings put up a picture of Michael Cohen in prison. This man is in prison today. His co-conspirator is Donald Trump. His co-conspirator is Donald Trump. These are absolute facts, okay? And then the obstruction of justice, and then the monuments closed, and then everything. And then as you're doing those, and the drumbeat is gathering for like, Jesus Christ, how many laws is this guy broken, right? And then he breaks this law. And then during the impeachment proceedings, you go, the president not only broke a law, but has obviously lost his mind. That would be that's the national conversation we should be having. But instead, the Democratic Party is so pathetic, so weak, that they're letting this child monster run around with no consequences at all.
I also want to just quickly touch on Trump's dictatorial nature, because this story reminded me of Kim Jong-il and how he claimed that he never defecated because he had no anus. Right?
I mean, it's uncomfortable, but he actually said that.
He said that. I mean, these are the types of ridiculous, nonsensical things dictators say because they want to appear as if they're perfect, that they have absolutely no flaws, they're always right, they're the most powerful, they're the strongest, they bowl perfect games, right? That's the way that they communicate. And at the same time, while we're having this conversation, understand what Trump and his allies are doing to go after people like us, people at establishment news organizations who report the news. They're raising money specifically for opposition research, so they can destroy any and all credibility of these reporters. That's what they're doing right now because they don't want any negative coverage on Donald Trump. This is what happens in dictatorial regimes.
And so we showed you just pictures of Trump with Kim Jong-un, and it's his father that Anna's referring to. He said that the North Korean news agency said he had never bowled a game that wasn't a 300. I believe they said that he routinely shot 27s on the most difficult 18-hole golf course. At 27. Okay, I mean, all of these are so preposterous, but it is how you build a cult. And so here's Trump building his cult, saying, no, I am perfect. If I said it's gonna hit Alabama and I draw it in with a crayon, you all will go, yes, it was gonna hit Alabama. That crayon is correct. The National Weather Service is incorrect, right? And hurricanes be damned, facts be damned. Even if I'm gonna die in a hurricane, I'm gonna die because my cult leader told me. I mean, it is a neck and neck contest for who is more pathetic. Donald Trump drawing in the Sharpie, looking at the kid, right? His idiot supporters are like, yeah, of course. Donald Trump knows better than the entire National Weather Service and has no anus, okay? Or Nancy Pelosi goes, oh, yes, sir, Nancy, okay, yes, sir. God damn it, aren't you gonna do anything?
Nope.
And the answer is no. Schumer and Pelosi, beyond pathetic. To lay down and surrender against this child, it's the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life.
So let's move on to a different story where Nancy Pelosi will also be discussed because she's very relevant to what's going on. The Pentagon has approved Donald Trump's plans to divert money from the military to help fund his border wall. Now remember, he had diverted money from FEMA. He had received funding to the tune of $4.6 billion from Congress for border security. But this latest round of funding, this latest round of diverting money from the military is something new, okay? So there are multiple examples of him doing this. And about half of the $3.6 billion will actually come from projects within the United States and its territories. The other half will come from projects the US military was planning in foreign countries. I mention that because, there's so much money that gets pumped into the military. One might argue, well, what's the big deal, taking a little bit of money away from them? But some of these projects are specifically meant to improve this national security of this country. And Trump has decided, no, there's an election coming up. I actually didn't follow through on what I promised to my base. So I'm in a rush to build this wall, and I am willing to divert any and all funds from any government organization to make this happen. This is all about a political win for Donald Trump. So let me give you some more details. Mark Esper, who's the defense secretary, determined that the use of the military construction funds was necessary to support American forces deployed to the southern border with Mexico under the national emergency that Trump declared in mid-February. Now, the military is willing to give him that money because they want their soldiers to leave the border. Trump had sent soldiers to the border, which is a waste of their time. And so Trump is holding them hostage. The military is like, all right, we'll give you the $3.6 billion you want. Just let us bring our troops back to where they should be. And at the same time, the military is thinking, well, Congress will appropriate more funds anyway. So we'll just wait on them to give us more money and then we'll be fine. I'm gonna give you the details to that in just a second. But that's where Nancy Pelosi comes in. And as always, she uses her strong language. But when push comes to shove, I would argue she's gonna give the military exactly what it wants.
Of course, the Republicans are saying, "Oh, we're going to backfill it anyway." So just let him go outside of the law and the Constitution to divert funding in a way that Congress did not intend. Well, then any president can divert any funding, and there are no laws left. There are no rules left. If we were in an alternate reality where there were strong Democratic leadership, we'd be in the middle of impeachment proceedings. And then this would be exhibit A in how Donald Trump is acting against the Constitution. And every day there'd be news stories about how he violated the Constitution. You can't just say, oh, well, Congress appropriated for X, but I'm gonna give it to Y instead. Where in the Constitution does it say that? It is one of the most obviously unconstitutional things I have ever seen in my lifetime. There's not even a counter argument. There is no counter argument. So show me anywhere in the Constitution that says the president can ignore a law that Congress passed and he signed into law and then just use the money for something else instead. And by the way, if that's the case, okay, great. So when Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren are president and they say, oh, you diverted $3.6 billion from the Pentagon, I'm gonna divert 36, you know what? No, $360 billion from the Pentagon, and I'm gonna put it into fighting the real emergency we have, the real national security problem we have, which is climate change. Well, what? You told me I could divert money. Oh, you didn't appropriate it for that. What do I care? I'm the president. Both Republicans and Democrats just let Trump divert the money. No consequences, no impeachment, no nothing. So I don't want any reporter or fake corporate Democrat or Republican crying when a progressive president says, I am now diverting a massive amount of money from the Defense Department into whatever I like, but probably climate change.
So I want to skip ahead and talk a little bit about what other members of the Defense Department are saying, including the Deputy Undersecretary. Her name is Elaine McCusker, and she says, the way we are describing it is really deferred, meaning the funding. If Congress were to backfill the projects in our request, none of the projects would be delayed. By the way, 127 projects are delayed or defunded as a result of what Trump is doing. But we do realize that this could cause some delay. They're definitely not canceled.
No, they are definitely canceled. You're saying if Congress backfills them, they will be put back on the schedule. But for now, they are absolutely positively canceled. And there's no indication necessarily that Congress is going to backfill. You don't know that at all. And even if as usual, the Democrats surrender, go backfill to make up for Donald Trump's unconstitutional acts, I wouldn't put it past Pelosi and Schumer to do it, but they have not done that. Okay, again, if you have a progressive president, we can say, well, you know what? I moved $300 billion, but don't worry, it's not canceled. You'll just backfill it. Oh, you didn't backfill it? Well, that's your goddamn problem. It's technically not canceled. Okay, I diverted it into Medicare for all. Good luck to you.
Look, they know that establishment Democrats are gonna give them exactly what they want. Remember, Nancy Pelosi handed Trump a blank check, $4.6 billion for border security with absolutely no safeguards for those children who are placed in cages. 24 migrants have died in US custody. And rather than saying, no, Democrats have control of the House, I'm not giving you what you want. You know what Pelosi did? Not only did she give Trump that blank check, she turned around, looked at freshman Democrats like Representative Ocasio-Cortez and attacked them in the New York Times. That's what we're dealing with when it comes to Democratic leadership, which is why you have these members of the military, or the Defense Department, I should say, coming out and brazenly saying, no, it's not a big deal. Yeah, we diverted the funds now, but later we're gonna get exactly what we want anyway. Let me give you another statement from Jonathan Rath-Hoffman. He's the Pentagon spokesperson. He says, these projects are important. The intent in prioritizing funds in this manner is to provide time to work with Congress to determine opportunities to restore funds, as well as work with our allies and partners on improving cost burden sharing for the overseas construction projects.
Okay, you know what? Look, it's the responsibility of the media to say none of that is true. It's not how Congress works. That's not how the Constitution works. If you're just repeating that and putting out their quotes without explaining it, you suck at your job and you just do political correctness to call everything even. So look, I hate to tell you that, but the rest of the media, unfortunately, this country is pretty terrible at their job. I mean, they'll put in their 27th paragraph, by the way, this is not normally how things go, and Congress is supposed to make the bills, and the president signs them, and then he can't divert the fund. Okay, anyway. No, it should be giant headlines. Constitution no longer exists.
So if I were part of the Democratic leadership and I were, doing an interview with a reporter on this very story, I would mention that, because that's important to mention, that what Trump is doing is wrong and that this is not the way our system of government is supposed to work. Now,
I would go a little further than that.
Yeah.
I would say here, I'm challenging Donald Trump to do it, because the minute he does it, I'm gonna start impeachment proceedings. And we are going to have a constitution in this country. And if Trump says, we don't have a country if we don't have borders. We don't have a country if we don't have a constitution. I'm daring you to move those funds. The minute you move those funds, we're gonna impeach you. No ands, ifs, or buts. That's how strength works. But a Democratic leadership wouldn't know that if their life depended on it. The only times they ever show any kind of strength is when they're attacking progressives.
And really, in this case, they are helping Donald Trump win his reelection. Because the only reason why Trump is in a panic to get the funding for this border wall is because it's really the only thing that he can latch onto in his reelection campaign. Now, I wanna just remind you of all the other money that was taken from other organizations within the country just to fund this border wall. The administration has allocated another $2.5 billion from the Pentagon budget for wall-related construction projects in Arizona, California, and New Mexico, using a counter-drug law, which permits the Defense Department to construct fences in drug smuggling corridors for federal, local, tribal, and state agencies. The administration is also planning to use $601 million from the Treasury Forfeiture Fund for construction of the wall. And also in late July, Donald Trump's administration informed Congress of its decision to reprogram $271 million from federal agencies, including $155 million from FEMA, in order to finance the effort to return undocumented immigrants to Mexico.
Oh, wait, where was reprogramming the Constitution? Was that Article 2 or Article 3, where the president gets to reprogram the funds away from what Congress decided? Oh yeah, it doesn't exist.
And then, of course, there was the $4.6 billion that establishment Democrats signed on to and handed Donald Trump.
Yes. Vote against all corporate Democrats in all primaries. It is your obligation to find out a primary in your district, in your state, and to vote against a corporate Democrat, because those are the incompetent losers that are getting steamrolled by a mentally challenged baby. I mean, if you can't beat Trump, you should retire from politics. And that's the entire corporate Democratic wing. That's like 80% of the Democratic Party. Pathetic to their core.
When we come back from the break, I'm gonna tell you a story about how Trump nearly obliterated the US economy just to try to teach China a lesson.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity, the UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFDR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
We'll be right back.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Lots of wonderful comments in the member section. Let's go to Ian. So I was watching Old School and they were talking about President Sanders/Warren. And what if Cenk didn't get a press pass for the briefings? But what if he didn't get a press pass because he was busy giving the press briefings?
Oh, I would argue that I should be the person.
Okay, well, Ian said Cenk for press secretary and threw in a lot of exclamation points. So
Ian, we deserve a follow-up. What do you think, me or Cenk?
Oh God, okay. Nobody's going anywhere, and that, yes, they're all hilarious thoughts. But thank you, Ian. Gabby Marita says, I know it's going to be a fun show when Anna's the one starting out a little punch drunk instead of Cenk. I hear you, sister. Onakazi says, surprised there wasn't a tiny sticky handprint visible on the map along with an apple juice stain. That's really funny and totally true. Ruth, the dog-faced girl, says, I just updated my membership. I'm now a producer. Whoa, da, 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 da. All right, Ruth, you're awesome. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, what do you got from Aspiration?
Aspiration is where you should keep your money because they actually have ethics when it comes to investing your money. They will not deal with fossil fuel companies. They will not deal with any of the shady corporations that we often cover here on this show. And also you have access, free access to any ATM in the country. If you get charged a fee by that ATM, Aspiration will pay you back. So check that out by going to aspiration.com/TYT, open an account, and I promise you'll love it.
All right, let's do it.
You voted for this president.
Yes.
Regrets?
Yes.
Farmers are already feeling the pain from Donald Trump's trade war. This is a story that we've been closely tracking. But now a recent report by CNBC indicates that Trump was planning on completely destroying the US economy just to attempt to teach China a lesson. Let me give you the details.
That'll show.
I know, it's insane. I mean, it shows you how little he knows about how the economy works, how tariffs work, and who actually pays the price for these tariffs. But according to CNBC, Trump wanted to double tariff rates on Chinese goods last month after Beijing's latest retaliation in a boiling trade war before settling on a smaller increase. Now, this part of the story is amazing to me. Steve Mnuchin, his Treasury Secretary, panicked and called up CEOs, corporate CEOs, and asked them to call Trump and beg him not to double the tariffs. And luckily I can't believe I'm even saying this, but luckily the president listened to the corporate CEOs, right? So Trump was outraged after he learned on August 23rd that China had formalized plans to slap duties on $75 billion in US products in response to new tariffs from Washington on September 1st. Later, after speaking to these corporate CEOs, Trump settled on a 5% hike in tariff rates on about $550 billion in Chinese products, which he announced on August 23rd in a tweet, as we all know.
All right, so two parts to this. One is, how could you be outraged that China responds with tariffs after you put tariffs on them? Isn't that what you would expect? Isn't that what any rational person would expect? And then you hope you get lucky and they don't retaliate. But you certainly expect that they would retaliate for a number of reasons. One, it's logical. Two, they're a very powerful economic force and they have the wherewithal to retaliate. And three, they've already done that several times when you increase tariffs on them, they increase tariffs on us. So how could you be outraged by the new development that when you increase tariffs, they increase tariffs?
Ooh, I know. So when you're someone like Trump, who immediately fires or retaliates against anyone who dares to challenge what you want to do, and you're constantly surrounded by a bunch of spineless yes men, then yeah, you get outraged. You expect everyone to play to your tune. You expect everyone to give you everything you want. So when he's dealing with a foreign country that retaliates, he's shocked completely by it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The sycophants kiss his ass all day long, and they say, even when he says the most outlandish things, I drew a Sharpie around Alabama, and now that it's the hurricane's going to hit Alabama, and everybody's like, yes, sir, obviously, sir, you've changed the path of the hurricane, sir. And windmills cause cancer because of the noise that they create. Of course, sir, of course. Don't go anywhere near a windmill, sir. That could give you cancer, sir, right? And so when China says, no, your reality is not correct, your version of reality is not correct, he's like, oh, how dare they? Because you know why? Because the president is mentally ill, period. So now the second part of it is, you don't know that doubling the tariffs is going to cause a massive turmoil in the market? So it's one thing to say, I know it's going to cause huge turmoil, but I'm being bold. It's a big risk I'm taking, but I've calculated it and I'm willing to take that risk. It's another thing to go, oh God, I didn't know that. Man, it's a good thing I talked to the CEOs. Turns out doubling the tariffs would crash the markets. I didn't know that. Because the president is mentally ill and one of the least intelligent people in the country. He's one of the least intelligent people in the country. 6 bankruptcies are not an accident. He can't run anything. When they talked to one of his main accountant, they asked him, hey, when Trump was doing tax returns, how was he? Was he savvy, etc.? Now you could argue that him being savvy could work against him in the tax returns because he cheated on his tax returns, right? But the accountant was like, no, he didn't ask many questions. He just said, make the bill low, okay? His wife, Ivana Trump, his original wife, she would ask a lot of questions and she would have thoughtful responses, the accountant said. This accountant, by the way, is supporting Donald Trump. He's trying to make Trump look good. Then the reporter asked him, how about his dad, Fred Trump? He's like, oh, no, Fred Trump was really smart. I mean, he cared a lot about accounting and he knew all about it and he knew business. Trump's a little idiot, spoiled kid. He's like, oh, make taxes low. That's why he doesn't know anything. So he says, double tariffs. Remember when he said, we should 10x our nukes? Everybody in the room was like, that it would take us like 10 years or 100 years to pay for that. That's not even close to feasible at all. It's total insanity. That's the meeting that his Secretary of State walks out and goes, that guy's an effing moron, right?
Right.
So he doesn't know what it would do to the markets. And yet the band played on. And so here we are, and the Democrats and the media and his supporters, we're all going on as if the president isn't mentally ill.
I also want to bring up something that I've noticed, because the markets will react to almost anything, including Donald Trump's tweets. So I've noticed that every time he goes on Twitter and he claims that the negotiations with China are going really well, when in reality, behind the scenes, we all know they're not going well. The markets react to that positively, which is terrifying because there are so many people who have their retirement accounts and their pensions and all of that invested in the stock market, right? So I'm gonna give you an example of something he tweeted. And again, we know what the reality is. We know what's really happening to these farmers. We know what's happening to truckers. In fact, for the first time in 3 years, the US manufacturing industry has retracted. So people are feeling the pain. And here's what Trump tweeted on September 3rd. We're doing very well in our negotiations with China. While I am sure they would love to be dealing with a new administration so they could continue their practice of rip-off USA, $600 billion a year, 16 months plus. And then he just starts, spitting out random numbers that make absolutely no sense.
The practice of rip-off USA? What is that? What is that? And look, in a sense, thank God the markets are not reacting rationally. If they reacted rationally, they'd already be in a panic. But I'm stunned at how little people in the markets know. They're like, oh yeah, well, we're having a normal debate about policy, and I wonder which way Donald Trump's gonna go on policy. he's a lunatic. You have no idea which way he's going to go on policy. And all these talks, they always say like, oh, we need tax cuts and deregulation. Why? Because the markets need certainty. Apparently they don't, because Donald Trump is the most unpredictable person on the planet. He doesn't even know what he thinks. And yet the markets, for the moment being, are perfectly fine. They're teetering on the edge, but if they were rational, they would have already crashed. I'm glad they haven't. I'm glad they're not rational in that sense. But guys, tick, 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 tick. They keep containing the child monster, right? And they keep padlocking him and bringing in actually rich people, actually intelligent people. And not that those guys are good guys, but they're just like, hey, Donnie.
Yeah.
Then the market crashes, it goes boom. Then your money goes boom. And he goes, okay, right? But one day it's not gonna work. One day the child's gonna throw a fit and they're not gonna be able to control him. And he's gonna do something that absolutely pulverizes the markets and everything else. And we're sitting on a time bomb doing nothing.
That's right. Well, since we're speaking about China, let's talk about a positive update coming from China and Hong Kong. So there have been mass protests in Hong Kong for the past 3 months, and it was in response to China pushing for an extradition bill that would allow for suspects in Hong Kong to be extradited to mainland China. Well, we have a positive update. Apparently the protests have worked and they've worked really well. Carrie Lam, who is the chief executive of Hong Kong, talked about the concessions that China is willing to make, but I want you to pay close attention to the entirety of her statement. Take a look.
The government will formally withdraw the bill in order to fully allay public concerns on dropping charges against protesters and rioters and shelving prosecutions. I have explained that this is contrary to the rule of law and is not acceptable. Our foremost priority now is to end violence, to safeguard the rule of law, and to restore order and safety in society. As such, the government has to strictly enforce the law against all violent and illegal acts.
So I'm curious to see how this plays out moving forward, because the protesters are very specific in their demands. They wanted independent investigations into the police response and police brutality that took place during the protests. They want amnesty for the arrested protesters. They also want direct elections for all lawmakers and the chief executive. They want Carrie Lam out, and she remains in power as the chief executive. So we'll see how that plays out. But when it comes to the extradition bill, it has been permanently withdrawn, which is exactly what they wanted. And I also want to note that just a day prior to Carrie Lam's statement, there was a statement from Beijing saying, no, there's going to be no middle ground. We're not going to negotiate. We're going to do what we want to do. And then a day later, you have Carrie Lam releasing this statement, because protests work, political activism works, unity and solidarity works. And it's really an inspiring story when you think about it.
Yes, now it's not anywhere near over though. So first of all, on the backpedal from China, Xi Jinping, the country's leader, said on matters of principle, not an inch will be yielded, but on matters of tactics, there can be flexibility. So he's obviously the one walking this back. And so that is a huge concession from the Chinese leader. But at the same time, it is clearly not enough. Okay, so before they tried half measures, they said, okay, we'll delay the bill. The bill is dead, but they didn't formally withdraw it. So finally, they formally withdraw it, the extradition bill. But on the review of the police excessive force, they say, no, there will be no review, but we'll add 2 people to the police board. Okay, but that's again a half measure. And so if they'd done this in June, most of the critics and the press believe that it probably would have worked if they'd withdrawn the bill right away, right? But now, after all these protests, guys, the context of the protests are amazing. So in June, there was 1 million people in one of the first protests on June 9th. And then a week later, there was 2 million people. That's a quarter of the country. So the equivalent here in America would be if 75 to 80 million people showed up in protests across the country. I mean, that's just, it boggles the imagination. So this is one of the greatest protests, arguably in history. And so now the protesters are saying, no, you got 1,100 protesters sitting in jail, no way. And in fact, they recently rounded some of the top activists and put them in prison before making this announcement. And one of the things that people are rightfully worried about is that this is a move to placate the moderates and then weaken and isolate what they call the radicals. And so they put all the leaders in jail. They tell the moderates, don't worry, we withdrew the bill. Everybody go back to sleep. And then they keep on flowing and keep on doing things behind the scenes to accumulate more power for the Chinese government against the will of the people of Hong Kong.
So I, of course, think that's a gross thing to do. So I don't agree with what mainland China is trying to do, but at the same time, it is a clever strategy. I don't know if it'll work because when you think of moderates, I mean, don't think of moderates in the context of the United States. The moderates in the context of the United States are just conservatives, right? But in Hong Kong, the solidarity was incredible, right? I mean, they turned out in the millions in order to protest what mainland China is trying to do and also to protest the police brutality. And one thing that really stood out to me in the statement some of the protesters gave to the press was how concerned they were for their fellow Hong Kongers, right? How much they worried about younger generations and they wanted to protect the freedoms that they do have, the liberties that they do have. Honestly, like I can't help but compare our situation in the United States and the rhetoric and discourse here with what's going on in Hong Kong, because the divisions here and the lack of unity here, even the lack of unity on the left, is a disaster for us, which is why we can't get things done.
Well, and so that to tie both of your points together, Anna, and they're doing this in the face of very persistent and intelligent opposition. So, first China threatened brute force. When that didn't work, they've now switched tactics and they're doing clever underhanded strategies that might work, but the protesters are onto them, et cetera, et cetera. Here in America, we have a buffoon as a president. Most obvious thing in the world, he's one of the dumbest people in the country. And that's not an exaggeration, it's not a hyperbole. I can list you a dozen things where it would shock the conscience at how stupid Donald Trump is. And our, I can't spit out the word leaders because they're not leaders, but the so-called Democratic leadership can't figure out how to beat him.
Right.
It's amazing. Amazing.
Look, we're gonna talk about this later in the show, but Democratic leadership and the DNC specifically is much more concerned in coercing and pressuring candidates to go to fundraisers than they are in defeating Donald Trump. In fact, for the candidates who refuse to go to these fundraisers where millionaires and billionaires fund campaigns, they're not gonna give them access to voter rolls. Think about that. They would rather punish progressive candidates and allow Trump to win, just to make a point about how much they love their donors.
It's amazing, and they're so brazen too. I mean, Biden today is attending a climate town hall with CNN, and right afterwards going to a fundraiser from the fossil fuel companies. Unbelievable. Can we do a trade? Can I take all the protesters in prison in Hong Kong, bring them here, and make them Democrats? Do you know how much stronger the Democratic Party would be? And do you know how much the world would be better off if we had the leaders of Hong Kong's protests over here? It would make a massive impact. So to all the people involved in the protests in Hong Kong, on behalf of the whole world, thank you.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to dive into gun control related news, including what Kroger and Walmart is doing in response to these mass shootings.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
We'll be back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Now, member comments. We do have updates on the press secretary position, the non-existent one that we are now apparently competing over. Koya's wig says Cenk would rant too often as press secretary. Anna could handle it better.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess that's another way of saying she ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Unprecedented Madness says, sorry, but I would love to see Ojeda as the press secretary.
Agreed. No, I totally agree.
I can see some, reporter doing some BS, mainstream media stuff. So you need not darken my doorstep.
I know. Like, I think that we have similar sodium levels in our character, right?
Yes.
But he's got a more poetic way of expressing himself.
He would, number of times Ojeda would knock over the podium. Anyway, check out Ojeda videos on facebook.com/rebelhq. He's killing it over there. Sometimes literally. Anyway, I'm kidding. Oh, by the way, the guy got sentenced, the one that's released Ojeda's files.
Excellent.
Yeah, so he's totally, there's a little bit of justice there, so that's good news. All right, Cenk's Elbow says, and that is a handle on our website, I'm a volunteer with the TYT Army and I watch the Young Turks to help identify media bias and propaganda and ensure people are informed and journalists and circulators of propaganda are held accountable. Join us. I love it. Join the TYT Army, absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys. Last couple of ones here. Colin says, aspiration needs to offer a defensive Trump-free IRA so we don't all lose our hard-earned money. That's a great point. I don't know if that exists, but it should exist. But otherwise, aspiration.com/TYT. Okay, all right, last one. Now this is a tweet. Cronkalicious writes in, first tweet in a long time viewer, first time tweeting as a member. Oh, awesome, thank you. Love you guys, keep up the fight. And Cenk, you should run for Congress someday. You're a younger Bernie Sanders. Well, that is a deep compliment. I greatly appreciate it. But we got to hold down the fort here in media because not a lot of other people are doing it. All right.
All right, we have an update on a story that we talked about earlier today. Recently, Donald Trump drew on a National Weather Service map using a Sharpie to make it appear as though the Hurricane Dorian is going to hit Alabama. There it is. Now, the original Weather Service map did not have that Sharpie mark on it. And so reporters have confronted Trump and asked him what this is all about. And let's take a look at his reaction.
You showed us a map earlier, the initial forecast.
Yeah.
It appeared to have been, I guess, edited or something to include Alabama. Can you explain how that change was made?
No, I just know, I know that Alabama was in the original forecast. They thought it would get it as a piece of it. It was supposed to go, actually, we have a better map than that, which is going to be presented where we had many lines going directly, many models, each line being a model, and they were going directly through. And in all cases, Alabama was hit, if not lightly, in some cases pretty hard.
And that map that you showed us today looked like it almost had like a Sharpie.
I don't know. Could have been a Sharpie.
Alabama was never in the storm's path. Never. Okay, it was never in the storm's path. What do you mean you don't know? Like, did that Sharpie mark magically appear? Would someone else put that on there? I mean, either he directed someone to do it or he did it himself because he's the only moron who lied about the storm's path hitting Alabama.
He drew it in with a Sharpie.
Oh my God.
I don't know. It could have been a Sharpie. It could have been a crayon.
Later, it's gonna hit Norway.
It could have been chalk. It could have been a lot of things. Okay, I don't know. All I know is, I said Alabama was gonna get hit, so God damn it, it's gonna get hit. Okay. and then he's like, well, luckily the storm turned around and stuff, but in the original projections, Alabama was gonna get hit. I don't know though. I don't know who drew in the Sharpie.
Really? You want to do an investigation? I mean, you guys, the Republicans did 8 or 9 investigations on Benghazi. How many investigations did they do on Hillary Clinton's emails? Not a single investigation on Donald Trump giving away our classified intelligence about Iranian missile sites. Nothing. He just gave it away on Twitter. He's like, oh, cool. He took a picture of it in a national security briefing and then tweeted it. I'm sure the rest of the room was like, no, right? And now he's like, oh, guys, I think it did hit Alabama. Here, look, I drew it in. And I don't know how it got there. It could have been my pen, could have been my Sharpie. I don't know. I do know, I really like Norway. This is our president.
Oh my God.
This is our country on drugs.
What kind of dystopian hellscape are we living in? Okay, all right, let's move on to other news. Jesus. Following the shooting that took place in Odessa, Texas over the weekend, both Walmart and Kroger, which is a grocery store, have decided that they are going to change what they will allow in their stores and also what they are willing to sell. So Kroger has released a statement saying that it is respectfully asking that customers no longer openly carry firearms into our stores other than authorized law enforcement officers. Jessica Adelman, who is the VP of Corporate Affairs, also says, we are also joining those encouraging our elected leaders to pass laws that will strengthen background checks and remove weapons from those who have been found to pose a risk for violence. Now, Walmart has also joined in on making some changes, which is definitely invited. Walmart said it will formally end handgun sales and ask customers not to openly carry firearms. Walmart also announced that it will be discontinuing sales on certain types of ammunition, including short barrel rifle ammunition. It also said it will discontinue handgun sales in Alaska, which is the only state in the country where the company still sells guns.
Yeah, so if you're watching this in any other country, you've got to be thinking, wait, this is a debatable issue in America? And yes, the right wing has reacted with fury. What, like what? I can't bring an assault rifle and openly carry it when I'm shopping for cereal? What kind of country is this, man?
Well, look,
I mean, what if I had to murder half the store? Like every other country's like, what? Even in Afghanistan, they're like, man, I don't think I want to go to America. It sounds really dangerous.
We have more guns per capita than Somalia does. Like that stat always.
And Yemen and every other country on the planet by a lot.
So I actually want to go back to what you said about the right wing losing it over this. Because from what I've seen, it's not necessarily conservative voters. In fact, a lot of conservative voters are showing up to town halls demanding that Republican lawmakers pass common sense gun control. And you look at the polls and over 90% of Americans want robust background checks. Now, with that said, and they want to close the loopholes to these background checks. Now, with that said, public figures on the right are losing it over the decisions of these private companies. Okay, so the NRA released a statement saying it is shameful to see Walmart succumb to the pressure of anti-gun elites. Lines at Walmart will soon be replaced by lines at other retailers who are more supportive of America's fundamental freedoms. That's not true. That's not going to happen. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Walmart's panicking as we speak.
Yeah.
Okay. So listen, I'm going to get to the second half of the story, which is really interesting about how corporations now rule us all. So that's the downside of the story. But to continue on this, if sometimes American tourists will go to a different country, Israel, Turkey, wherever they might go, and they'll see guys in military fatigues and assault rifles, or cops with assault rifles in front of a bank or an embassy, etc. And they'll come back and they'll be like, "Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. That it felt weird to see that. It's kind of jarring to see." We have randos with assault rifles walking malls and shopping stores, buying pickles and mayonnaise, and then if you bump into them, God knows who they're going to murder, right? And we have mass shooting defined as 4 people getting shot literally every single day in America, okay?
Yep.
And so all those other countries that feel unsafe to you, like every once in a while I get a question, oh, is it safe to go to this country? No, is it safe to stay here is the real question. So Kroger and Walmart are doing the most obvious things. Can you please have a shirt on, have shoes on, and don't murder all of our customers? And the NRA is like, oh, Oppression. Now look at this. The elites don't want to be murdered at Kroger. This is insanity.
Dozens of people were just killed at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, right? So maybe this type of move makes a lot of sense for a store like Walmart. And by the way, I just want to read one other right-winger who thinks this is unacceptable, and that person is Ben Shapiro, who said the left has found a new way of implementing policy from the top down without the use of government, simply pressure massive corporations to do their political bidding. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's how the so-called free market is supposed to work. So people are aggrieved at the practices of a given company, and the market adjusts, the company adjusts. This is their entire argument, right? Yeah. I mean, an idiot like Dave Rubin will say, no, we don't need regulations because people can just pressure these companies. They can write negative reviews on Yelp, and then out of the kindness of their hearts, these companies are gonna change their behaviors. Here we have an example of that working to some extent. I mean, Yelp isn't involved. And they're upset about it, and they're arguing that this is a top-down approach. How is this a top-down approach?
Yeah.
Average Americans are sick of this.
So I don't know if you saw, Dave Rubin just got a job with Blaze TV.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah, because Glenn Beck loves to work with classic liberals. Okay, anyway, back to Ben Shapiro. So I love this hypocrisy on 18 different grounds. So first of all, Ben Shapiro in the past has led protests and boycott movements. The famous one against Ritz Crackers. Oh, right, not famous at all, didn't work. Look, jokes, etc. aside, conservatives have led boycotts of Disney. It was one of the most epic failures of all time. Remember Nike and Keurig Coffee and all the things. Like whenever you turn on Fox News now, you see some conservative be like, oh, me smash, me burn, oh, me hate Nike. Nike stock goes up $6 billion. Yeah. Okay, me hate Keurig, me smash coffee over my head. Keurig stock goes up. Okay, so you know what happened, guys? We won. We won the free market debate. So there's more of us. There's more progressives in the country, more sane people in the country than you lunatics. So, the free market, you wanted it, you got it.
Exactly.
So there's more customers, clients that are progressives, that are rational. So now all of a sudden they go, oh, boycotts, which they love. You saw it on Fox News over and over and over again. None of them ever work because there's not enough of them, right? There's only a certain percentage of lunatics in the country. So now that the protests and the boycotts aren't working, which they love doing, they're like, oh, free market sucks. I hate the free market. Cenk, I don't live like a capitalist every day. I hate capitalism. What? Say that again? Say that again?
No, it's actually pretty incredible because in the context of this story, they will argue, no, but this isn't how the free market works. This isn't how the free market is supposed to work. It's just a small, loud majority that's applying political pressure, which is why Walmart and Kroger made this decision. Let me tell you something. At the end of the day, these corporations have absolutely they don't have values, they don't have morality. They're not thinking about anything other than their bottom line, their financial incentives, how they can make the most possible money. And if you look at polls, you will see that the vast majority of Americans, despite what the NRA says, want common sense gun legislation. People are sick of it. So they are responding to what the majority of Americans want. And they're not doing it out of the kindness of their own hearts. They're doing it because they're concerned about their financial incentives.
Because most rational human beings, when they walk into Kroger's is the largest grocery store in the country. Walmart, obviously, the largest chain store, period. And when you walk in to get Fruity Pebbles and you've got your kids with you, and you see some lunatic walking around with an assault rifle or any kind of weaponry, what do? What do most rational dads and moms do? They leave the store in case the thing goes off accidentally, or that guy gets upset, and I've seen mass shootings every day in the news. You immediately walk out of the store. Bad for business. I mean, they require you to have a shirt and no one goes crazy, right?
Right.
But they're saying, how dare you ask us to put away our assault rifles next to your baby? Okay, so last thing is, the downside to this story is, we now have rule by corporations.
That's right, yeah.
And so, I had a great progressive activist on the Young Turks. In the third hour, we do interviews. It's called A Conversation, and he explained that they were doing a movement against it, and it worked and wonderful. And it worked only because there were more of us on and more customers on our side than their side, et cetera. And so it was a great thing for him to do. But it's a sad state of affairs in a democracy when we have to beseech corporations to take action. Because if you notice, it wasn't just that they banned it in their stores, they then asked the government to take action because the government doesn't listen to citizens. It only listens to corporations. So we have to pressure Walmart for Walmart to pressure politicians. So the only thing that could beat other PACs and lobbyists and corporations is even larger corporations. So progressives rationally, as activists go, oh, who cares about writing letters and actually having your constituents talk to you, because we know for a fact your constituents aren't gonna matter to the politicians because they're almost all corrupt. But if we can get Walmart and Kroger to ask you to do it, then Marco Rubio might actually listen.
It's amazing.
And so that's the situation we're in now, where different corporations, it's almost like they're running Congress. We should just
they've been running Congress.
No, 100%. But now it's gotten like so brazen. Kroger's gonna go on TV to debate the NRA or to debate Smith & Wesson, and then whoever wins, right? And by the way, it'll be the one with more money, then all the politicians will vote on their side. This is a sick state of affairs.
Well, we're gonna keep talking about this gun debate when we come back. There are some unusual plans for some of the campuses throughout the country to combat the mass shootings that are going on. And then later on, Tucker Carlson says possibly the dumbest thing I've heard him say, and that is he's got a low bar, right? So we'll do that and more when we come back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.